Welcome to Therapy for Nerds, the show where licensed mental health professionals use their favorite topics like TV, books, games, and movies to provide psychoeducation on mental health. Please note, this is not meant to be a replacement for mental health treatment or services. Hi everyone, Cassidy Russell here with Therapy for Nerds, along with,
Abby, and how's everyone doing?
I know I'm doing exhausted because I did not sleep last night. Well, I would have slept, but someone in my house is teething, so no one sleeps.
That's super valid. Yeah.
But today I wanted to talk about video game music, especially because I heard recently at the Grammys, a video game actually won a Grammy this year.
Hmm. That I didn't know.
Yes, the recent Assassin's Creed game, I guess, won a Grammy.
That's so interesting. Is that the first time a video game has won a Grammy?
To my knowledge, yes, but I feel like I should fact check myself before I put that on the internet.
That's okay. We're it's rare enough that it doesn't happen often, and we know that this is somewhat of a big ordeal. Yeah.
Yeah, it just feels like the mainstream is kind of picking up on how video game music can actually be good and beneficial. I
Mhm.
know, um, I know I saw this in a study a while ago saying that video game music is especially good for helping people concentrate on tasks because video game music is made in a way to help you focus on the video game. And
Hmm.
so if you switch it out, the video game part out for some kind of task that you want to complete, like say homework, it can
Mhm.
help you complete that task. Especially for my ADHD clients, that's something that I highly recommend is listening to video game music while they're trying to do homework.
Interesting. Yeah. I've never heard about that specifically. However, I do know that any type of noise for some individuals, sometimes when it's just too quiet, it makes it harder to concentrate and focus on whatever it is in front of you. Like that's why like white noise machines exist. And I was mentioning to Cassidy earlier that I've also heard of like brown noise. But I think that makes a lot of sense of what you're saying because I'm just envisioning myself playing a video game, and a lot of video game music is very, what's the word? It's like projecting the game forward or helping you to progress in
Mhm,
something, and it like slowly
mhm,
progresses in the sound too. It's not,
mhm,
I don't feel like all of it is very pressuring, but it does make you feel like you're moving towards something most of the time, just generally speaking
mhm.
about video game type music.
Well, you also have to think of like the way video game music is kind of set up because if you're listening to an average song, right? There's a there's an introduction, a build up, a climax, and then a falling down in like your average song, right? But when it comes to video game music, it's set up in a way where it loops continuously. So you're not having that like drop off and start up and drop off and start off for the most part. Like I'm sure there's some exceptions to that, but it's more continuous and more smooth so it doesn't interrupt the flow.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I think a lot of the music, like you said, it's like it's made for the game, so it has intention and purpose. Where a
Mhm,
lot, and most, not all video game music, but most of it is instrumental,
mhm,
which I feel like I've, again, maybe I should check this before I start talking too, but the discussion of like where language is in your head. So
mhm,
I remember being in a psychology class in college and them talking about how it's very difficult for you to write words while being on the phone and listening to someone, but it is easy for you to draw pictures because the words when you hear words and you write words, it comes from the same part of your brain, which causes
mhm,
confusion. So I feel like when you're trying to focus on something like studying or
mhm.
reading or whatever, it would be very difficult to hear songs that have lyrics versus songs
Yeah.
are instrumental.
Yeah. It's funny when you started saying that, like, a song that came into my head, which has lyrics, but it's from a video game, is, like, the song from one of the levels in Sonic Adventure Battle 2,
Mm,
and, like, specifically that video game, 'cause and I remember that a lot of the levels had lyric songs in them, but, like, one of the first ones, if not the first one, was, like, "Running around at the
yes,
speed of sound,"
that's
and,
one of
like,
my
that
favorite
just
songs. But it's so funny too. I was gonna say like some of my favorite albums are Sonic One, Adventure 1 and 2, and they do have there's a lot of songs that do have lyrics and some that don't have lyrics, but all the songs are very uplifting and very motivating. So whether that's
Yes.
I really study on this paper or like I need to do 20 miles on this elliptical or whatever,
Mhm.
it really pushes you forward and motivates you to do your best, I think. Most of these songs are not some of them are scene setters. Like I'm thinking of like the haunted house scenes in Super Mario World,
Mm.
which are kind of scary. Obviously, they're setting the scene and like making you feel very
Mhm.
like spooked. But none of it is like nothing. I can't think of one video game song that's very like depressive. Of like you can't do this. Just don't try. Just stay outside of the house or the castle or whatever it is. Just don't come inside.
Yeah, I can't think of any either, and that's funny, I was gonna ask you, like, what your favorite video game music was, or,
Oh,
like, what game has the best music in your opinion?
it's so funny. So I know like this is a huge meme of like the lo-fi girl from YouTube. So there's a channel that has lo-fi Zelda music on
Mhm.
YouTube.
I've
You
watched
know it?
that. I've watched it.
That's my
I've
favorite.
I've watched it, I've done yoga to it. I literally gave birth to it. I'm not kidding
Yeah,
you.
you're very connected to that one then. Yeah. I
And to
don't know.
be fair, I was in labor for, like, 36 hours, so that we did
36
a lot.
hours? Yeah, you had time. You had
We
time.
had time, we did a lot. But, one of the things my husband did was put lo-fi songs on to help, like, chill the
Yeah.
room, but yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a seed setter. I'm a big one on that. Like I like the lo-fi. However, I've been like, just a consumer myself. I've been to a lot of those orchestrated video game music things. So I've been to several of the Final Fantasy like Distant Worlds ones, and I've been to like several of the Symphony of Goddess like Zelda ones, and like yeah, it's different. I don't know. It's not the same as going to a concert. It's the music itself is very. I don't. Do you think it's because we're nostalgic for it? Like, do you think it has something to do with like how we feel as children and like us playing these games, or do you think it's the composure, like how people compose the music?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's, like, a mixture, but I do think there's something to be said for the composition of the music itself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I remember early college going to one for Final Fantasy. And, like, I had played a lot of Final Fantasy games, but I hadn't played all of them, and it was still, like, it was an awesome experience, and there's nothing quite like hearing the Sephiroth theme
Oh my God,
song, live and in person.
absolutely. Yeah, I don't know if I could study to that one, but definitely
No.
gets you in a certain mood. Yeah, that's how I feel about One Winged Angel too. That's just like a different level of music, and that's so interesting, right? Because there's such a variation of video games. There's so many genres
Mhm,
of games, and the music is just as varied. And people like it's so funny. I was just talking to a client about this of how like we all learn differently because we're different people. And
mhm.
I personally, I don't know if I'm going to get flack for this, but I don't personally think that the American school system is made for every person, like the
No.
learning style. So there's music for everyone. Like there's video
Mhm,
game music probably I would say that could appeal to every person potentially,
mhm.
and potentially support you in the way that you feel like you need to be supported in studying.
I also feel like different video game music might be good for, like, different areas of study.
Yeah.
Uh, like, I remember, like, I was working on a novel that I like been on and off working on for a very long time. And one of the like peaks of me writing it was during like when Undertale had just come out. And
Mm,
so one of the things I would do when I was writing it is I would listen to like Undertale music. And
mm,
it really got me into like the character that I was writing the perspective of, and it just felt really uh it worked really well for that. It also worked really well because that was when I was working at a middle school, helped tremendously with me writing all the notes I had for the middle school job, and I had a ton of
yeah,
notes.
always with the notes.
Ugh.
Yeah. I'd be curious if there was some kind of study about that, like, and not necessarily just video game music, but any kind of music. Like, do certain genres help people to promote certain types of motivation or like certain types of work? I have no idea. But I would guess to say yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need uplifting music, and sometimes you need something just more mellow, like just
Mhm.
depending on what the task is, or actually also how you're feeling inherently going into the task, right? Like
Mhm.
talking about notes, like personally, I don't really necessarily love writing the notes. That's probably the least favorite part of my job as a therapist.
Mhm.
So I can imagine that maybe something more like motivating, more like uplifting, something that's like really pushing you towards, driving you towards the end of
Mhm.
that task is probably better than something that's like what do you call it? Like start menu type music where it's just looping
Mhm. Yeah.
endlessly and you feeling like there's no end to this, like, oh shoot, like this whole pile of notes is never going to go away. Yeah.
That's when you need boss music.
Oh yeah, to really up
Mhm.
up the ante there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting though. Now that we talk about it, like a lot of things in life are tasks. A lot of these
Mhm.
things are maybe not a boss, maybe not a mini boss, maybe not even a level, but like we're always trying to strive towards something, to accomplish something, and maybe that's the reason why video game music pairs so well with life things.
You're touching on a subject of gamification, which is actually something that I think we should research and maybe do a topic on.
Oh,
But I'm
okay.
not sure if you've heard of it, but it's like uh it's a theory where like you can if you gamify tasks, it
Mm-hmm.
makes it more enjoyable to complete. And it's like the logic behind there's an app called Habitica, and it makes it so that like you gain experience and level up
Mm-hmm.
for performing a task.
Mm-hmm.
And for Habitica, like you could make your tasks be like make my bed every day, go for a walk 3 times a week, and that kind of stuff. So like you're building habits, and it can be really helpful for a lot of people, especially if like having for one of the thing about video games is you have tasks that you complete, and then you get the award. You get some kind of award of like, even if
Yeah.
it's just a congratulations, you did it, yay, sort of deal. Which how often do we get that in our daily lives for doing things like the dishes?
Right. That makes so much sense. I've never heard of it described in that term, like gamify, but I have seen a lot of like therapeutic tools that have been like made into games or like have an
Mhm.
element of quest to it, which I think is very smart. I don't
Mhm.
think I there's always this debacle, right, about like growing up and being an adult, and I think especially millennials, people in our age range, very fearful of this whole idea of growing up. And I'm probably taking us into a tangent, but there's this huge dysphoria for people our age of like, well, they told me by 25 if I went to college I'd get a great job. Oh, they told me, I should have kids, like I should be doing all these things, and like we don't
Mhm.
have that anymore. Pretty much for people in our age range, there is no expectation anymore or like qualification for adulthood. So I think that like turning into a game or making it scaffolding yourself into what you want to do, whether that's making your bed or taking walks or whatever it is, and building those tasks for yourself and building experience in that is so much smarter than us using, I don't know, the previous generations,
Mhm.
marker. markers for what we want to do in the century. It's completely different from what they were experiencing at our age and time.
Yeah. Yeah, the world is way different. And there's a lot to be said for like making things into a game, which is what the gamification is all about. So I personally think it's a really it's a more fun way to start getting tasks done because you're gonna have to do it no matter what. So you might as well feel like you're accomplishing something more than just the task itself.
Yeah, I really challenge anybody out there that's listening and maybe something that you're having difficulty with, whether that's some kind of, New Year's resolution that you made for yourself or just something that you feel like has been really difficult to do or something you've been dragging your feet on. Maybe turning it into a game and you get to decide what the rules are, which is really cool, can really help you to develop that skill.
Yeah.
Maybe make it fun. What's so bad about making it fun? Like there's nothing wrong
Mhm.
with enjoying life. Everything doesn't have to be miserable.
Yeah. Maybe listening to some video game music while you do it.
Yeah, I'm curious. Like, I'm pretty sure like anyone listening to this podcast has probably heard or has a favorite video game soundtrack or music, and I'm wondering
Mhm.
like what they use it for too. Like we're talking about
Mhm.
studying specifically, but I can imagine, like I said, like it's probably good for a lot of things.
Mhm.
Um, and
I know personally for me when I was doing yoga, I haven't done yoga in a while because I've just my body's been a mess. Uh but I should get back to it. But when I was doing it pretty consistently, one of the music that I would have on in the background was just Breath of the Wild. Uh and that was that was amazing. I love Breath of the Wild music. It's so relaxing.
yeah, that's a fan favorite, definitely. I guess this podcast is very much promoting. We don't get paid, but Zelda music is very good for a lot of things.
Oh man, I'm looking forward to Tears of a Kingdom.
I know that's going to be really exciting. So we're definitely going to have to do a podcast on that one.
Definitely. I wonder if Candace can help us get going on like a Twitch stream of that. That would be really cool.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a lot I think that could be explored both like psychology wise also in the game. It's interesting because there's a book, not that I'm promoting the book, but there's a book called Psychology of Zelda. I haven't read it yet, but it was made a couple of years ago. I'm really curious what it says. I mean, I guess, this can be an ongoing conversation and we can take it in so many directions. So I'm really like looking forward to hearing more about music and video game music in particular and how it like develops and helps people. I'm gonna actually do some self-study and look into some articles to see if there has been anything made up. And if there is, I'll send it to you to put in the link so people can check those out too. Um, but yeah, there's so much out there. Again,
Yeah, if you learn more, like maybe we could do a part two. Maybe we could find like a music therapist and get their
oh
perspective on it. That'd be fun.
yeah. And I again like talking about the quest and like doing like making games gamifying
Mhm.
life tasks. I think there are some therapists that specialize in that too, especially for people that are
Yeah.
yeah, or have
Yeah.
executive function or executive struggle with executive functioning. I've heard that too. That doing game of
Mhm.
like making things games can be very helpful.
Yeah. Especially for like kids too.
Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Okay. Sounds good. No, thank you so much for bringing this topic up. I'm really interested now.
Yeah, I feel like we could definitely do a part two or three or four in the
Yeah,
future with this
let us
topic.
know if you want to hear more about video game music particularly and what you want to hear, and we'll make another episode.
And what video game music you're listening to and how what it helps you with, whether it's exercise or some kind of menial task or
Or
some kind
going
of academic task.
into hours.
What was that?
Or going into labor for 36 hours. Okay. Well, everybody stay safe out there.
Have a good week, everyone. Bye. Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, please comment, like, subscribe, and follow us on social media. Remember to be kind to yourselves this week.